The story begins in a beautiful flower shop adorned with a colorful array of flowers. The shop's interior is filled with various flowers, and outside, a bicycle is parked with additional flowers displayed on it. Amid this floral beauty, a boy with striking blue hair is seen resting his head on his desk, engrossed in his notebook. Surrounding him are two towering stacks of books, appearing as quite a challenge. In his moment of desperation, the boy mutters with fatigue, expressing his exhaustion. He feels like he can't continue this study session, and his head is spinning. His mother enters the scene and calls out to the boy named Amiri. She remarks that he always starts slacking off only after 5 minutes of studying, and she wishes he could make her life easier. However, the boy with blue hair doesn't seem to pay much attention to his mother's words. Instead, he simply rests his head on his desk. His mother, undeterred, continues to talk about their neighbors, specifically mentioning Xiaoling from Auntie Wang's house, who diligently attends 2-hour extra classes at noon, working harder than her own son. Still, the boy remains indifferent to his mother's words, showing no inclination to study. Just before his mother leaves, he finally addresses her and agrees to help by hanging the flower baskets on the rack. He asks her to make sure the ropes are tied securely to prevent any mishaps, especially if strong winds were to blow. But just like most kids, Woosong had a unique blend of laziness and sheer lack of brain power. Immediately began complaining, as he couldn't understand why the hell were these plants inside in the first place, since everyone knows plants need sunlight and water. So putting them up on these shelves is just a whole lot of trouble for him and the plant. Luckily for him, his mother already worn out by his previous antics, so she had neither the energy nor the inclination to respond to this ungrateful failure. To her surprise, as Woosong attempted to hang the plant, it became evident that his laziness knew no bounds. In a moment of what could only be described as sheer absurdity, he wished he could be a plant. After all they did was bask in the sun, drink water, and grow. His mother, however, is very vigilant, and so she had heard all of this, and she even noticed that he hadn't done what she had specifically told him to do. It then became clear that she couldn't even rely on her failure with a simple task, and so she told him to come down and scold his ass for being this disgustingly useless. And she bets that even if he becomes a plant, he would still be a failure, given that he had an entire set of limbs and yet remained this bewilderingly useless. And just like what any kid would do, he decided to make a quick exit from their house, fleeing the relentless barrage of his mother's chatter. And as he strolled along, he couldn't resist a sarcastic remark about how his mother's words seemed to flow endlessly, much like a never-ending stream from a pea shooter. However, little did he know, he was about to learn the hard way why it's crucial to secure potted plants properly. As the universe would have it, a certain potted plant decided to take on the role of truck kun, as it had also smelled someone who was in need to be ice-guyed, so it made a daring escape on its porch. And just as intended, the unsuspecting passerby, which is Woosong, found himself in the wrong place at the wrong time. As the aforementioned plant pot made a direct hit, rendering him lifeless on the ground, his head broken and is now bleeding profusely. And in the midst of this calamity, life started flashing before his eyes, particularly when he was about to eat the mouth-watering dishes his mother had masterfully crafted. However, as soon as he took a bite, he was in shock to witness that all those delicious food turned into dirt, which he instantly spit out. But with this, he soon realized that it was all just a dream, and so he promptly opened his eyes, only to find himself in a total darkness, and his limbs inexplicably felt as though they'd been tied up. But despite the surreal and disorienting circumstances, an oddly appetizing aroma tantalized his senses, which was something going for him at the least. However, it was still dark as heck. Therefore, as soon as a faint light revealed itself, he didn't hesitate to follow it. And just like that, a new sprout emerged from the earth, reaching hungrily toward the warm sun, unexpectedly. This sprout was none other than Woosong's new form, and soon he noticed his petal-covered physique as well. With this, shock blossomed across his face, but not even a moment passed. He was petrified to realize that his transformation isn't limited to his looks, as he noticed that he was now surrounded by tall grass everywhere, the sun looking quite rather tasty, and all the flowers were now quite literally his neighbors. With this, it was fucking evident that he totally became a flower, which in turn made Woosong's anger flared as he demanded answers. And so, he retraced his memories to the last thing he could recall, a rather gruesome demise involving an improperly secured flower pot. And as the pieces of this peculiar puzzle clicked into place, he arrived at the utterly bizarre conclusion that life did him dirty, and the reason behind his reincarnation as a plant seemed to stem from his own frequently cracked jokes about wanting to lead the simple life of a plant, which was kind of unexpected to say the least. and so he cried to the almighty being, and clarified that he was merely kidding, and was just casually talking about how he wants to become a plant. So there was no reason for him to take it seriously, therefore he would be eternally grateful if he do him a favor and just quickly change him back. But this grief of his abruptly stopped as a realization struck him. Similar to the reborn protagonists he'd read about in countless novels, they typically received systems, and embarked on paths to godhood. And given his current circumstances, it wasn't too far-fetched to assume that he might also have a system of his own. With this in mind, he began shouting for his own system to appear, startling every other plant nearby. However, he didn't care, as he is experiencing the stages of grief right now, and after a week of this had passed by, he has come to accept his fate. It appeared there was no system coming to his aid, and he was in fact just an ordinary plant. But since he is now at the acceptance stage, he just looked on the bright side of things, and so he was thankful that he hadn't become something worse, like some blade of grass. Furthermore, the dark earth he had chosen to sprout in was pretty good. It was rich in nutrients, fragrant, and even tasted delicious. So it seems like he was going to grow well in this environment. The only downside was the crowded space. This was to be expected, due to the fertile soil. But he soon discovered that having neighbors was more challenging than he'd initially assumed. They were all opportunistic bastards and had outgrown him, and now they were hogging all the sunlight, while he on the other hand was all deprived of it, and so he tried to reason with them, reminding them that they were of the same species and didn't need to be so cruel. However, they were just plants. They couldn't help but stay put. With this, Woong noticed the similarities between his current situation and his previous life. It felt like déjà vu, reminiscent of how everyone in his class used to one-up each other while he underperformed. However, his current predicament was more about survival, and he wasn't going to let anyone get in his way. And so he did his best to capture some sunlight, and his efforts were successful, as he could finally absorb his daily dose of vitamins, and with no more flowers blocking his view, he noticed a silhouette in the distance. Upon closer inspection, he was surprised to discover it was a llama, and this was the first time he had seen such a beautiful creature, because in his previous life, his parents were always busy and never took him to the zoo. So this creature seemed more like a mythical beast to him than any creature from his imagination. Furthermore, it was hella cute, so he was overjoyed to witness it up close. However, a grim realization suddenly struck him. He remembered that this cute creature was a herbivore, so getting closer could only mean one thing. It was going to eat the plants, and just as he suspected, the llama went straight down and opened its mouth to grab a bite. And since he was just a flower, running away wasn't an option, so he ducked, hoping to lower his chances of being eaten. Luckily, this maneuver was enough, and the llama only got the first thing its tongue had touched. Fortunately, it didn't go for another round. It seemed that flowers and plants weren't to its taste, and so Woong could live for another day. However, to his surprise, the llama had a few tricks up its cheeks, as it decided to take a massive dump right in front of him. And upon closer inspection, another grim realization dawned on him, and he could have continued living without knowing it. But it was too late now, as he realized that the dark dirt he had sprouted in wasn't actually dirt, but a massive dung all along. In response, he couldn't help but throw up and curse vehemently. He couldn't believe that even after learning this fact, he still thought that this feces tasted good and smelled delicious. While it might not be unreasonable for a plant to feel this way, he was a former human, and to him, it was still feces. So his emotions were mixed between disgust and pleasure. A few days later, all the flowers bloomed simultaneously, including Woong. However, it became apparent that his development was quite different from the rest. He had fangs, and the other flowers looked at him as if they'd seen a devil. Luckily, a strange tablet materialized in front of him, revealing the reason for their strange looks. It turned out he had transformed into an ugly-ass plant with spikes everywhere. This revelation shocked him. He couldn't believe he had turned into a big-mouthed creature, reminiscent of a monster from a childhood video game. Now he understood why everyone regarded him strangely. However, his focus quickly shifted back to a mysterious mirror that had suddenly appeared before him, piquing his curiosity. He reached out to touch it, but this action of his only prompted it to disappear into thin air, just like how it appeared. But to his surprise, it had now integrated within him as a system interface popped up, indicating that it had detected he had blossomed and entered the juvenile stage. As a result, the flower system had been automatically activated, and seeing all of this unfold before his eyes made him very ecstatic, as this was what he had been searching for over the past couple of weeks. But before he could celebrate further, a friendly system sprite named Ruhua introduced itself and showed Woong his status panel, only to reveal to him that his skills were trash as his only active skill is Swallow. Furthermore, they did him dirty with how the system described him, referring to him as a big-mouthed flower who was planted in alpaca dung and an ugly-ass plant who doesn't have the ability to defend itself. With this, he couldn't help but question if this was a mistake, as he thought he would be dominating the world right now. But it seemed like he was on the path to become a laughingstock instead. But before he could complain any further, his attention was diverted to another system interface that informed him he had received evolution points by sunbathing for a minute, as well as additional points for absorbing minerals from the soil and moisture. And since he wasn't a stranger to this kind of trope, he instantly knew that these evolution points could be used to upgrade and strengthen himself. And so excitement filled him once again. And the fact that his evolution points just kept flowing in at a rapid rate made him more delighted than ever before. And just like that, he quickly gained 100 evolution points without even moving from his spot, which obviously he doesn't have any other choice. Being a plant, of course. However, this feat can't be seen anywhere else, so he was thrilled with the system he had, as it seemed more like a cheat than anything he had read about in novels. And with this cheat system helping him, he was confident that he could outgrow the other flowers competing for sunlight. And so, he summoned Ruhua to show the others what he meant, prompting Ruhua to immediately approach him and presented different options for using his 100 evolution points. He could choose to upgrade one of these 6 core parts, such as flowers, stems, leaves, roots, fruits, or seeds. But since he aimed to grow taller than the others, he immediately chose to upgrade his stems. After confirming, the process was a success, and his height increased by 3 millimeters, which wasn't noticeable at all. Even the other flowers were confused and are experiencing a second-hand embarrassment from looking at this ugly plant. With this, Woong immediately lashed out to Ruhua, asking what kind of garbage system is this to scam him like this. He thought he was good, but it turns out it was all disappointment. To which Ruhua just brushes it off and explained to him that 100 evolution points that were used was just for him to try out its effects, as it was only the first evolution after all. So if the effects is too little for him, he could just accumulate more and use them to further strengthen his stems. However, Woong was already aware that with each level increase, the required points would also increase. So at this rate, it would take longer to surpass his competitors, and he wasn't known for being a hard worker. So this realization greatly dwindled his motivation. And just when he thought his day couldn't get any worse, a wasp wandered near Woong, and since he was in a bad mood, he tried to tell it to leave him be. However, this wasp didn't respect his wishes at all, continuing to fly around him. With this, he knew he couldn't let this disrespect slide, so he used his vines to smack it as hard as he could to get the message across. But little did Woong know, this wasp was even dumber than he was, as it mistook his mouth for the sweet nectar of a flower, and so it didn't hesitate to enter, which shocked him. And so he panicked, as he had experienced life for 17 years but had never eaten raw food, let alone a giant wasp. So he tried his best to get it out of his mouth, but it seemed too late. He could already taste it, and he was surprised to realize that it didn't taste bad. In fact, he kind of liked it, which was reasonable because he sort of liked the taste of soil as well. This also made him wonder if plants had a sense of taste. But before he could ponder this further, his train of thought was interrupted by Ruhua appearing before him once again. This time, Ruhua's demeanor was more uplifting than before, as he congratulated Woong for completing his first feast, and rewarded him with a blind box treasure chest, which could contain random rewards like a large number of evolution points, plant genes, and more. However, it required 10 evolution points to open, which seemed like an absurd amount. With this, Woong suddenly felt that the rate at which he was gaining evolution points was no longer great. However, since he wasn't going anywhere anytime soon, he decided to save some points to open it. And so, 5 excruciating days of working hard to get the most out of bathing in the sun had passed. He finally accumulated 10 points. And therefore, he didn't hesitate to ask Ruhua to open the chest immediately, which Ruhua was happy to do. Luckily, inside the treasure chest was a B-level vine gene that could be integrated into his stems. Woong was shocked to see it, as he realized that he could become the legendary tentacle monster. Furthermore, this fusion could make him significantly stronger and open up many opportunities, so he didn't hesitate to fuse with it. With this, a sudden beam of light illuminated towards his stem, and soon after, the fusion has been completed, and therefore he could now transform his stems into vines to whip his opponents hard, or even tie them up playfully, which Woong was enjoying this more than he should, as he even declared that he would like to be called a tentacle monster from here then on. Woong was happy with this turn of events. The vine he had now was as flexible as his own fingers, and he could even make shapes and faces with it. Even the other plants around him were amazed, And according to the skill description, if he leveled up this skill in the future, he could make the vines burrow out of the ground and surprise attack his opponents, just like other tentacle monsters in the novels. So, the next time the wasp came near, he would be more than glad to make it his meal. And just as he wished, another wasp entered his vicinity, and so he didn't hesitate to whip out his long brown vines to practice his new skill on the wasp, which he had personally named this skill the Lightning Whip, as he was expecting some impressive results. However, he soon faced the harsh reality that his equipment ain't that long, and it couldn't be any longer, as it was already fully stretched out. So, he had no choice but to retract his tentacles, change his tactic, and just wait for the wasp to come closer. And while he is at it, he was wondering if enhance means that the vines can be made thicker and longer in the future. And as he was in deep thought, the hornet was slyly trying to get closer to him, to annoy him even more, unaware that it was walking right into Woosong's trap. And so without a moment's hesitation, Woosong whipped out his brown vine again, this time with more vigor, confident that he wouldn't miss. But my boy is really taking L's one after the other, because even before his stem could touch the wasp, another creature swooped in and stole his prey. This left Woosong in shock and disbelief, questioning the bizarre reality he found himself in. His efforts were all in vain because of some lizard. With this, he was furious, and so he launched an attack on that stealing son of a gun, grabbing its tail tight, since he decided to eat this lizard instead. So even though it tries its best to run away, Woosong wouldn't let that happen. He used all his strength to pull the lizard toward him. However, he had forgotten an important detail about lizards. They have the ability to detach their own tails. As soon as the lizard did this, his tentacle backfired at Woosong, disorienting him for a moment, which gave the lizard the opportunity to escape, while Woosong decided to let the lizard go as he lacked the ability to chase it. However, he resolved to be prepared if he encountered the lizard again, and on the brighter side of things, he did have the lizard's tail to eat, which was better than nothing. So he decided to consume it, hoping something would happen. But to his dismay, only silence followed, as the system didn't give any prompts at all. So it appeared that he could only get treasure chest rewards by devouring a whole living creature. With this, Woosong was now searching for anything to eat. But now he noticed that there were very few insects here, not even a fly can be seen from miles away. And the only thing that seemed to be plentiful in this place was piles of dung. And so it took him 1 week to find another bug, which he didn't hesitate to devour, only to discover that it was a dung beetle all along. This really pushed him into insanity, as he couldn't help but wonder why, of all things, it had to be that kind of beetle. He felt like the world was making fun of him. However, stuck in a dung pile as a flower, there was little he could do about it. So he chose to forget about raging and accept his fate, and just focus on the bright side of things once more, putting all his attention on the treasure chest, eagerly awaiting what he would get, only to receive an evolution points again. But fortunately, the system isn't as cruel, as it gave him double the amount every time. Otherwise he would be in deep shit, physically and figuratively. Still, his desperation grew, so he questioned Ruhua about whether he needed to devour a caterpillar or a fly to develop another gene, which he wouldn't mind and will gladly eat it for him if that was the case. But unfortunately, it wasn't what he wanted, as Ruhua clarified that it doesn't work like that, as he is just a plant system, not a bizarre eating system, where the weirder things he eat the better result he would get, and the way he responded is quite really irritating in the eyes. Luckily, the spotlight was diverted towards the rustling of the bushes, and to Woosong's surprise, it was the stealing lizard. It had come back for another round, which he was more than glad to settle the score, whipping out his tentacle once again. But Woosong just couldn't catch a break, as it revealed to him that the lizard is actually running away from something. And that something was a giant fucking toad, a whole lot bigger than Woosong, and just like what every toad can do, this motherfucker could leap, shocking Woosong entirely. But my boy ain't a pushover either. He can't just let this big daddy do what it wanted, especially when he didn't do anything, as the toad was just chasing the little lizard earlier, so there wasn't any reason why it is attacking him right now, unless it doesn't respect him just because of the size difference, which Woosong couldn't let such things slide, and so he brought the smoke to the toad, whipping its meat as hard as he could. He even made the toad flip, with how powerful he whipped up his thing. However, this wasn't enough, as the toad just easily recovered, and was now looking him like a snack. But Woosong ain't playing around either. He wouldn't just stand there and wait for it to attack, and so he launched a nasty left hook. But because the toad wasn't in the air like last time, has a steady footing, and it already activated its own skill turning its skin to stone, and therefore it had received Woosong's attack like it was nothing, and then took the opportunity to grab his vines, surprising Woong yet again, as he didn't expect this toad to be more intelligent than it looked, and unfortunately for him, this toad had another trick up its sleeves, as it can use its tongue freely, so it wrapped around Woong quite easily, which confused Woong at first. But as soon as it tugged him hard, he realized that this FG is actually trying to uproot him on the spot. And as a plant, this hurts like hell, like his body is going to be torn apart, and it hurts him so much that he was thinking that this must be a punishment from God, because in the past he would sometimes take advantage of the flower and plants on the wild grass to vent his anger. But feeling sorry about it now isn't helping his case, as he was close to be fully uprooted by the toad, and he knows that it will be over once he is fully uprooted, as he could feel his life is draining away cold and unforgiving, which he didn't expect would happen so soon as he reincarnated. But to his surprise, before he could come to that conclusion, he noticed the yellow lizard was now up a branch and is about to do something. Unexpectedly, it then signaled him to keep quiet, which surprised him even more, as he wondered what kind of world he had traveled to, where all the little animal here are so intelligent. And just like that, the lizard soon took action, jumping on the toad's face, and this lizard isn't to be messed with, as it ain't planning to deal some light work. This lizard wanted to see some blood, so it opens its jaws wide and munched one of the toad's eyes, dealing a significant blow, as blood come gushing out right after, and therefore the toad had no choice but to let go of Woong, and crashed on the ground. To it opened an opportunity for Woong to strike, which Woong didn't think twice to deliver, wrapping his vines on the toad, and beat that toad senseless. And my boy was straight savage as well, as he clapped them cheeks like how Hulk pounded the shit out of Loki. And the disrespect was real on this one, and he ain't even showing any sign of stopping, even for a bit. But little did he knew, this toad was enjoying this more than he should have, as it involuntarily lets out some frog juices everywhere. But because of this, it had lubricated Woong's thick-ass vines. And so this helped the toad to slip the fuck up. Even Woong was flabbergasted of how naughty this toad was. But he can't do nothing no more, as this toad was also fast on his feet, dipping out like he was dodging child support. Unfortunately for it, Woong already got a good look at him, so he better not think even for a bit to appear in front of him again, cause he promises to clap those cheeks as soon as he got a glimpse of him. However, this event also reminded Woong of how fragile the life of a plant is, so he was wishing to become a human again. But before he could sulk even more, the lizard appeared before him, which confused Woong at first. But the way it was bowing its head could only mean that it is asking for forgiveness. But he wouldn't just forgive it that easily, as the lizard is the one who brought the toad in the first place. And so the lizard decided to show him its sincerity, fixing the soil he was standing on like how it was used to be, with this, and the fact that it also helped him get rid of the toad. Woong forgave the lizard, which in turn made it smile and make a cute sound, surprising Woong yet again, as he can't believe this lizard could be this intelligent. The fact that it could use the environment to deal with enemies, and it also know how to help plants cultivate soil, was more than proof that it was more intelligent than a simple lizard. And so this made him wonder if it was normal for it to be able to understand what he says, or if he is even speaking human language or flower or animal language for that matter. But before he could find some answers to his question, he was in shock to see that the lizard is about to leave just like that. And since this is the first friendly interaction he had made after reincarnating, he wouldn't just let it leave without saying goodbye. However, it seems like it doesn't mind it at all, as it just continued to strut away. This made Woong disappointed, as he thought he had found a friend to chat with in this unfamiliar place. To his surprise, the lizard abruptly stopped. It turns out that it took notice of a bug near its vicinity, which it didn't hesitate to grab, and then it immediately went back to Woong. While Woong on the other hand is sweating like crazy, as he was more than worried what it was trying to do next. And just like that, it whips out its tongue close to him, showing to Woong the bug that it had caught, and seeing that Woong's confused face as he couldn't grasp what it wants to convey. The lizard promptly pointed to the bug, signaling Woong to eat it, which perplexed him immediately, as he couldn't just eat something that had came out from the mouth of anyone. He ain't about that life. However, the lizard seemed to be genuine about what it wants, as it warmly smiles while still offering him the bug, and with how cute it looked, he couldn't resist its offer. However, he wasn't willing to eat directly from the lizard's mouth, so he signaled to the lizard to put down the beetle, and he would feed himself. But the lizard remained stubborn. In the end, he decided to go for it, reminding himself that he had already eaten a dung beetle before, so a little lizard saliva shouldn't be a problem. With this, he had received another treasure chest, but before they could open it, Ruhua noticed the little lizard, which Wusong noticed his confused look, and so he explained to Ruhua that this little fella is the one responsible for this new treasure chest, and so he would also like to give him the honors to open the treasure box as a meeting gift to signify their friendship, which the lizard was clueless on what to do with the chest, as it was a lizard after all. And noticing the blank stare of the lizard, Wusong realized that he had overestimated its IQ, so he instructed it on what to do next, which the lizard was confused at first. But luckily, it still tried its best to respond, which was just enough for them. Unfortunately, Wusong received the same skill as before, but the system isn't so cheap to make this a useless duplicate. Instead, it gave him two options to choose from. First is that he could use it to upgrade his original vines, while the other choice is to use it to add a new vine. This made Wusong very delighted, and so before he could choose, he thanked the lizard for being this lucky. After that, he thinks hard before deciding what to choose from those two options, and the fact that he was almost uprooted by the toad because there were too few vines. He made up his mind and decided to add a new vine, to which Ruhua gladly delivered waving his wand, which then covered Wusong with the nature's aura to evolve Wusong once again. However, it seems that this guy isn't cutting him some slack at all, as he was given a smaller vine than he had expected, which made him look like a deformed lobster with this thing. So he promptly asks Ruhua what the F is wrong with him, to which Ruhua casually brushes it off just like before, telling him that what he gave him is only natural, as there are no shortcuts after all. And he had also accumulated a lot of evolution points. So instead of complaining, he should just start his hunt again, so that he could witness the thickness and length that he wanted.